All right, Algebra 2. Today's going to be a little bit of a longer video, which means we won't have homework today. I'll just expect you all to watch the video, review your notes and stuff from this video, and then we will work on this concept next week. I will have a discussion at the end of this video in the e-learning for tomorrow that just says, what did you understand? What did you have trouble with? And what do you need to see more of? Just so that I can get a grasp of what you all thought about this lesson. And then if we need to do some more practice on it on Tuesday next week, we will. All right, so today is about function operations. So function. We've talked about some functions at the beginning of the year. Functions. Oh, I forgot to tell you all. These notes are going to be in the file folder. So if you want to print them off and follow along, you can. Okay. All right, so back to a function. So a function has one input for every output. And when we talked about this at the beginning of the year, we mainly just said no repeating x values. Because every domain, every x value had exactly one range y value. So you couldn't have any repeated x values. So some graphs of things that are functions, lines. Parabolas, absolute value shapes. Those are all functions because if you were to draw vertical lines down those graphs, none of the x values would repeat. So that's just kind of a refresher of what a function is. Today we're going to talk about function notation. And we've talked about this a little bit this year. Now that we're in Algebra 2, things are a little bit more fancy. Pinky out, fancy. All right. And when they talk about functions, they're not just writing things as y equals 2x plus 3 anymore. They're writing things as f of x equals 2x plus 3. Okay? This is function notation because it's saying the function of x. So this is a function of the letter x is what that means. And today we're going to work on function operations. So when we're talking about operations in math, we're talking about adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. And that's what we're going to do with the functions, is we're going to do operations on them. So before we start that, if you have your notes printed out, you'll be able to see this. If not, I'm going to jot them up here real quick and you may want to jot them down. Okay, so these are our function operations. So the first one that you're going to see is f plus g of x. Okay, they may write it like that. You will notice that there is a plus sign, which is telling you to take function f and add it to function g. If it's not written like that, then it will be written as f of x plus g of x. You'll still notice the plus sign there, so you'll still know to add them together. There's also subtraction, which would be f minus g of x. You'll see the subtraction symbol there. Or they could write it as f of x minus g of x. Here I am writing the parenthesis again. Okay, but you will still notice the subtraction symbol. All right, multiplication would be f times g of x. And it's very, 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 very important that you notice that this is a closed-end dot because next week we're going to do something that has an open dot. Multiplication is a closed-end circle. So that's f times g of x. They might also write it as f of x times g of x. Look at me writing that parenthesis again. I cannot get out of the habit. Okay. And then the last one is division. And they write this as a fraction. So they would write it as f over g of x, which just means f of x divided by g of x. Okay, so addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Those are just all the different ways that they could write it. And that's what we're going to do. They're going to give us two different functions, and they may ask us to add them, subtract them, multiply, divide them, all of them, one of them, two of them, none of them. Well, I guess it wouldn't be none of them. It'd probably be 1, 2, 3, or 4 of them. But anyways, that's what we are looking for, okay? So let's go to this first example on your notes here. I hope I'm going to have enough room, especially for the ones for multiplication and division. All right. So it's going to ask us to do f plus g of x, and it's going to ask us to do f minus g of x. And then they're going to tell you at the top that f of x is 4x plus 7, and g of x is the square root of x plus x, okay? So that's what they're going to tell us. They're giving us two different functions. And the first thing they want us to do is add them. So it's telling me to take f plus g. So I'm going to take function f, which is 4x plus 7, and I'm going to add it to g of x. So I'm going to add to g of x, which is the square root of x plus x. I'm going to erase this down here so I'm not going to have enough room. Okay, so they're asking us to add the functions together. So when I'm going to add these functions together, all you can do in math when adding and subtracting is put together the like terms. So I'm going to look for like terms that I can put together. So these x's are like terms because they're both just plain x's. This is the number 7, no other plain numbers, and this is the square root of x. And remember, you can only add and subtract things that have exactly the same x. So this is the square root of x. It would have to be added to another square root of x, and I don't have any other ones. Now, when you go to combine things, you need to make sure your answer is in standard form. So remember, standard form is highest to lowest exponent. So these have a power of 1 on them. A square root is a power of 1/2, so it would go second. Numbers are a power of 0. So 4x plus 1x is 5x. And then plus the square root of x, because it didn't have any like terms, and then plus 7. None of those are like terms, so that would be my final answer for f plus g of x. All right, remember, you can rewind this video, you can watch it again, listen to it again. All right, so I'm going to erase that, and I'm now going to do the second part that it asks me. So like I said, if you print it off your notes, you'll see how it's on here that it's asking you to add and subtract. So now I'm going to subtract. Now, here's something you have to remember when you subtract. When you are subtracting more than one term, you have to use parentheses around it to show that you are subtracting all of the terms. So when I go to write f minus g of x, I'm going to take function f, which is 4x plus 7, and I'm going to subtract all of g of x, which means I need to put it in parentheses. Okay. And then I'm going to look for like terms again. So since these are the same equations from the last one where we added them together, we already know what the like terms are. This 4x and this 1x. But in this case, we are subtracting. So 4x minus 1x is 3x. And then the next part that I would write would be the square root, because that would be the next one in standard form. But look in front of that square root, it's minus the square root of x. So minus the square root of x. And then I have plus 7. And that would be my answer in standard form. Okay. All right, let's do another one. Same directions. We're going to add f plus g of x and subtract f minus g of x. Okay. All right, so different functions this time. So f of x equals 5x squared plus 1. And g of x equals x squared minus 4. Oops, I wrote that down. That's a 5x cubed. Sorry. X squared minus 4. All right, so the first thing that they're going to ask us to do is f plus g of x. So I'm going to add function f to function g. So function f, 5x cubed plus 1, and I'm going to add that to g of x, which is x squared minus 4. Then I look for like terms. So 5x cubed, x squared, 1, and negative 4. So only the numbers are like terms, okay? So when you go to write it, your answer still has to be in standard form. So I would write that 5x cubed first, and then that plus x squared, and then I would put together like terms. Positive 1 minus 4 is negative 3. And that's all I have for my like terms, so that would be my adding the functions. Then they're going to ask you to subtract, okay? So now I'm going to subtract f minus g of x. So I'm going to take function f, 5x cubed plus 1, and I'm going to subtract g, which is x squared minus 4. All right, so like terms would be these numbers again, but it's subtraction. So it's going to be 5x cubed, and then minus the x squared. And then this is positive 1 minus negative 4. So 1 minus negative 4, which is 1 plus 4, which is 5. Okay. All right, I'm going to write another one up here. It's going to be your turn to pause me after I write it up here, and I want you to do f plus g of x and f minus g of x. All right, so and then g of x will be x minus 3. All right, so I want you to do f plus g of x and f minus g of x. Pause me here and go for it. All right, so you should have taken 2x squared plus 8 and added it to x minus 3. The only thing that were like terms were the numbers. So 2x squared plus x, 8 minus 3 is 5. Then you should have subtracted 2x squared plus 8 minus the x minus 3. So that'll be 2x squared. The only thing that were like terms were the numbers again. Minus x, and then 8 minus negative 3. Minus negative 3 is plus 3, so 8 plus 3 is 11. All right. We're chugging along here. We're going to do some multiplication and division. Now, the multiplication involves FOIL, double distribute, sometimes triple distribute, depending upon how many numbers are in the function. And then the division typically involves factoring. So you have to put back on your factoring hat, and remember, A times C busts the B. All right. All right, so the directions for this next slide on problem 2, my foot's going to sleep. On problem 2 is to find f times g of x and f divided by g of x. And I'm going to do them separately because I'm not going to be able to fit them on here. All right, so the first function they give us is f of x equals x squared minus 9. And g of x equals x plus 3. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is do f times g of x. So when you look at your paper, f times g of x, it's got that dot so that you know you're multiplying. So I'm going to take function f, which is x squared minus 9, and I'm going to multiply it by function g, which is x plus 3. And I'm going to double distribute here. So x squared times x is x to the third. X squared times 3 is 3x squared. Then I go back and double distribute. Negative 9 times x is negative 9x. Negative 9 times 3 is negative 27. And then you'll look for like terms. So 3, 2, 1, 0. There are no like terms. My answer is in standard form, so bingo, that's it. So that one's not too bad. But I'm also now, and remember you can rewind and watch this again, they're now going to ask me for f divided by g of x. So I'm supposed to take function f, which is x squared minus 9, and divide it by g of x, which is x plus 3. And sometimes that would be it. Sometimes you can't simplify it anymore. But if you see an x squared, that means it's a quadratic, and you should try to factor it. So up on the top, I see x squared. That's x squared minus 9. That's difference of perfect squares, which means the factors are the same. They're opposite signs. So the square root of x squared is x. The square root of 9 is 3. So that top factors to x plus 3 and x minus 3 because it's difference of perfect squares. And then if you see factors that are the same, they can reduce out. But in order to reduce, it has to be changed into factoring because that's multiplication, and you can reduce things that are being multiplied. So these x plus 3's can cross reduce out, and my final answer is x minus 3. All right, let's do another one. I'm going to change the problems on you too. Okay, so this one's a little bit more difficult, and I'm probably going to run out of some space here. So hopefully I'm not writing too small. Yes, I'm doing this in my bathroom because my child's sound asleep out there, and I'm not going to do this in the morning because he'll be in the video. Won't get anything accomplished. All right. So f of x equals 2x squared minus 7x minus 15, and g of x equals x minus 5. All right. So I'm first going to do f times g of x. So I'm going to take function f, which is 2x squared minus 7x minus 15, and I'm going to multiply it by g, which is x minus 5. This one I've got to triple distribute because it's a trinomial times a binomial. So 2x squared times x is 2x cubed. 2x squared times negative 5 is negative 10x squared. Negative 7x times x is negative 7x squared. Negative 7x times negative 5 is positive 35x. Negative 15 times x is negative 15x. And negative 15 times negative 5 is positive 75. Look for like terms. So these x squareds are like terms. These x's are like terms. So 2x cubed, negative 10x squared minus 7x squared is negative 17x squared. 35x minus 15x is 20x, and then plus 75. So that is the multiplication part. Now we're going to do the division part. Okay. All right. So they're going to ask you to do f divided by g of x. So that'll be 2x squared minus 7x minus 15 divided by x minus 5. Now, like I said, sometimes you can stop here, but since that top has a quadratic and x squared, I have to factor it. So a times c busts the b, and I'm going to try to do it right here. We'll see if I can fit it. All right, so 2 times negative 15, that's negative 30. So what multiplies the negative 30 but adds to negative 7? 3 and negative 10. So a times c busts the b, so I'm going to bust the b with 3x and negative 10x, and then I'll factor by grouping. So the GCF of 2x squared and 3x is just x. The GCF of negative 10 and negative 15 is negative 5. Negative 10 divided by negative 5 is 2. Negative 15 divided by negative 5 is 3. So I know I did it right when my parentheses are the same. So the same becomes 1. 2x plus 3, and x minus 5 becomes my other one. And now that I factored that numerator, I can cancel out any factors that are the same. So these x minus 5s cancel out. So my final answer is just 2x plus 3, because that's all that I have left. All right, I'm going to write these two up here. It'll be your chance to try them and pause me and then check them. All right, I'm trying to keep this under 20 minutes. So we've got 17, we're up to 17 minutes. Okay. So f of x equals 3x squared minus 11x minus 4, and g of x equals 3x plus 1. So pause me right here and do f times g of x, okay? All right, so 3x squared minus 11x minus 4 times 3x plus 1. So 3x squared times 3x is 9x cubed. 3x squared times 1 is 3x squared. Negative 11x times 3x is negative 33x. Negative 11x times 1 is negative 11x. Oops, I forgot my squared. Negative 4 times 3x is negative 12x, and negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. Like terms, so that'll be 9x cubed. 3 minus 33, that's negative 30x squared. Negative 11 minus 12, that's negative 23x minus 4. So that was the multiplication. Now let's do the division, and pause me again. So I'm going to do f divided by g of x. So 3x squared minus 11x minus 4 divided by 3x plus 1. So that's a quadratic on the top, so I'm going to have to factor it. So 3 times negative 4, that's negative 12. So I'm multiplying to negative 12, but adding to negative 11. So 1 and negative 12. So that's 3x squared plus 1x minus 12x minus 4. Factor by grouping. So the greatest common factor of 3x squared and 1x is just x. The greatest common factor of negative 12 and negative 4 is negative 4. So negative 12 divided by negative 4 is 3. Negative 4 divided by negative 4 is 1. So I know I did it right because my parentheses are the same. So that'll be 3x plus 1 and x minus 4 divided by 3x plus 1. The 3x plus 1's cancel out, so I just get x minus 4. Okay? All right, so remember to go to the discussion, tell me what you thought was good, what was bad, and then we'll do practice problems next week on Tuesday. All right.